Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership, and today on Servant Leadership Podcast, I have two. I don't even know how to describe it. Amazing human beings, the leaders of leaders, men of men, but just humble and desiring to help other kind of people. And you'll see more of what I say or what I meant, what I said here in a minute. And some of you that are in Colorado, you probably know of Greg Greenwood. You may have heard of Bob Neuman. Certainly, if you're in Denver, anywhere in the leadership circle, these two names and faces are not going to be new to you. So let's start with you, Mr. Greenwood. I noticed you said off air you're drinking out of a Ted Lasso cup. By the way, speaking of opportunities to learn leadership and parenting and just overall great advice, where has Ted Lasso been all these years? My God, he's such an influence on me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how they've taken a basic sitcom, which is based on humor in a very odd situation, and turned it into life lessons, not just leadership, but life lessons that are simple, and they really caught on. It's funny. I was showing this cup to someone yesterday on a Zoom, and they're like, "Oh, but you got to hold it crooked like the sign above the door when they walk out."
Yeah,
It's little
he's
things in life that it's okay if it's not perfect.
yeah.
Mm.
And Mr. Newman, tell us about where you are today. What's happening in your life and what's top of mind.
Well, let's see. I'm talking to you right now from my little mountain villa home in Evergreen, Colorado. And yeah, just well, when you talked about what's on my mind, and being humble, the thing that keeps occurring to me, the lesson I guess I need to learn is to lead with empathy.
Mm,
And I have not seen Ted Lasso. I think I've seen the first episode, but I certainly have heard about it. We don't have television here.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, so I've heard about Ted Lasso, and like I said, seen the first episode, and I get why people are so excited about it. And I think my sense is that Ted Lasso is a humble leader, but has a real sort of strength, quiet strength under him that comes through and teaches folks things that they need to learn. So yeah.
Yeah, we could talk Lasso all day. You hit it on the nail. He was an odd choice to coach this team. Certainly didn't know come here from Sikkim about the sport of soccer, but it is what we all see in the real world is there's these really powerful men and women. They're very arrogant. They've ruled the world, so to speak, and then they get picked for these big jobs. We pay them millions of dollars, and no one likes them. Ted Lasso, you might not like him, but you want to follow him. He's just that guy. Let's jump ship to 2009. First of all, before we talk about CTLF, we'll give that a name in a minute. How did the two of you meet, and when did you know? And I'm going to go with you first, Bob. What was the first time you met Mr. Greenwood, and what did you think about him? And when did you know this guy might be interesting for me to do more things with?
Mm. Yeah. I think so I owned an office furniture company with a couple of partners at the time, and Greg might correct me here if I get some details wrong, but
Yes, he
he
will.
he did business with my partner. We sold, I believe we sold Greg some office furniture, and I'll be honest, I can't remember exactly the first time that you and I met, Woody, but my sense is that there was an immediate connection because we're both sort of outdoor lovers. Woody is a magnanimous. He's got a big personality, and he's somebody that attracted me, immediately. And I just sensed that there was something there that would allow us to do some things together. I didn't know what that was in the beginning.
Something was just clicked between us, and I think it's that adventure spirit, more on the sports and outdoor adventure side. And I knew you were a really good skier, and then you told me you used to what's the skydive thing? Not skydive, but you're a
Paragliding.
paraglider. And I'm like, I'm a whitewater kayaker. I'm like, wow, he's way more adventurous than I am. I gotta stay close to him. And yeah, And I'm a runt. I'm 5'9", you're 6 something, and I'm like, this guy's a former European model. Like, I could go places if I hang out with this guy. That's why I got plugged in with this guy. No, but
Magnanimous.
and then he has a cool
Magnanimous.
nickname like Buck, and I'm Woody. So just, I don't know, just a really good synergy flow happened in the beginning, and it
Yeah.
just kept going.
Yep.
So when you met, you decided there was an attraction to adventure and outdoor other stuff. What would you say was the reason you got together to create something together? And then Woody, I'll let you take this one. What were you thinking when you and Bob had that famous meeting to create CTLF?
I think I was thinking, if anyone can support me in this situation, I want to talk to Bob. We weren't really close, but we had admiration for each other. We spent time together. We tried to help each other in business in the marketplace. And when things got really challenging in the fourth quarter of 2008, Bob and I talked, and we decided to have this lunch in January 2009, the infamous lunch now, and that lunch just went on and on and on. And I'm like, I really enjoyed this conversation around everything. We talked about it all, and what we both really came back to was, let's be of service to others versus of service to ourselves first, and let's see how that works out. And Bob, you could take it from there, but that it was such a that that's the nature of Bob Neuman and why I wanted him in my bunker during that difficult time of the subprime lending debacle.
Yeah, so Greg and I came together and just started riffing off one another. As I recall, Greg's Greg's a take charge kind of guy. Woody is a take charge guy. So we met in a Ted's Montana Grill, and they have the brown paper on the tables, and Greg started writing and just writing and writing, and it was a big like John Madden kind of play chart going on there, and yeah, we just kind of the shift was, we came in there, I think, to kind of help ourselves, but then we, as he said, said, what, let's serve others first. And that was kind of this light switch, flipping of a light switch for me, which is like, yeah, what if we can help others, and what would that be like? And yeah, maybe we'll get helped in the process, but then, it was just exciting. I think of the possibility of what we could create. And then we thought about, well, who else do we need to bring into this fold?
So
Mm.
not quite like Herb Kelleher and Roland King when they created Southwest Airlines. You guys were drawing up maybe not triangles from Dallas to San Antonio to Houston, but you were drawing up some playbook, as you alluded to, Bob. So what was it that you were beginning to create, and how did you come up with the concept of CTLF? And Woody, to you, explain to us what CTLF is. Why was it so important for you and Bob to kind of get this vision started? And then who else, other relationships, other partners that you brought in to support your vision?
I'd never really even heard the term thought leader, but Bob brought it up at lunch that day. Um, I knew the word forum from YPO, and I was in a forum for a long time, and I appreciated the authenticity that came to that, and where we were there to help one another as a small group. And Colorado just kind of brought it together. So starting with the name, we kind of just bookended it with things we knew, and then Bob dropped in this word or this phrase I'd not heard before, which is thought leader. And I didn't think of myself as a thought leader. My thought was I need just to be around thought leaders myself. So let's
Mm.
convene others. And Bob had some friends, and I had some friends, and we got them around the table. And what I think is really cool about what Bob has shared is that, we it's the belief. Like, we believe that we could make a difference if we
Yeah.
came together and locked arms and focused on a common mission. Not only did we believe that, we wrote checks to do it. Like, we were at the end of our rope, but everybody said, okay, we're going to write a $3,000 check a piece. So 8 people, that's $24,000. We could do a lot with $24,000. So we pooled. It's the strength of pooling together, not just resources, but experience and connections and things like that. So uh, it just was a selfless act, I think, from the beginning. I remember going to lunch with Frank Milanazzo and at lunch saying, "Hey, I'm going after this to go meet with some really cool people and work on something really fantastic. And he had just split away from his business partners. He goes, I'll come. And he didn't have the money to write the check, but he's like, I'm writing the check. I'm finding a way to do this. This is really cool because I want to be a part of something that's serving others. That's really the on ramp of the beginning of Colorado Thought Leaders Forum. Bob, feel free to chip in.
Yeah, like you said, we felt, I think, strongly about the what we were creating. What we were creating at the time, we said, all right, so what do other business owners like us, what do they want? What do they need right now, given what, the lack of clarity in the marketplace? And we thought, well, they need a crystal ball. And we thought, well, what's a crystal ball? And back to Greg, he knew of an economist named Brian Bolio, who was renowned for his wit and humor and his accuracy in predicting things, forecasting the economy. And so you must have reached out to him, Greg. You knew of him through YPO, I think. And so we created this event that was going to be, an economic forecast of what people could expect. And so that was what we created, a signature event. So we got together in January and it was some date in May, I believe, that we launched, or we had our first event with this fellow, and we had about 250 other small business owners and in the audience. And that was the launching off point. And it was, my recollection is it was very well received. It was pretty successful, except that I sort of locked up on stage and forgot what I was going to say. And that was quite embarrassing. But other than that, I think people really found a lot of value in it. And Greg and I and the others that had come together said, this is something. We got to double down on this, whatever this is.
Yeah. Give some names to maybe not all the other 6. You mentioned eight people at 3,000 a clip that were initially. Just give us a name or two that you can think back to those days, Woody, and that really stepped forward and wanted to take charge, not just follow the two of you.
Yeah, Doug Sparks for sure stepped right into the arena with us. Bob brought Matt Ward and Keith Hurley. I brought Sarah van Rensburg. Who am I missing, Bob?
Brian Wagner, I think, was with us early on.
Yep, Brian was there.
Matt
Emerson.
Matt Emerson. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know Matt was there in the beginning. That's cool.
Yeah.
Bob, you mentioned something that was, again, not many men would say this. Your recollection was you choked up or you forgot your line or whatever on stage. But that's who you are. The day
the guy that forgets his lines. Yes.
No. The day I met you through a group that Doug McGee, give him some credit. Doug McGee, Mr. Leadville, just finished his 10th Leadville, by the way. Congrats, Doug. Was putting together a group of men, 6 of us, if I remember correctly, and you either took a liking to me or wanted to shut me up. But we visited at your office, and I just knew you were somebody special. And I say that not out of anything other than my honest opinion of my first impression, but you were someone that always spoke your heart, and you asked great questions, and you were very very generous with your time. And because of you, Mr. Neuman, you did the most unspeakable thing. You said, Greg, you should come to a Strategic Connections meeting. And I did, April of 2014. So why don't you take us into how did the 2 of you and the 6 others, how did you turn CTLF into what I consider to be one of the better servant leadership development? I know it's not a networking, but tell us more about Strategic Connections and where did that come from?
Yeah, so Strategic Connections was an organization that existed for quite a while. It was started by a woman named Donna Pagano, who had created a very intentional group revolving around sort of the science of networking. That's where it started, and she had it for many years, and then she sold it to a fellow named, I believe, Scott Martin, I think. And so Scott had it at the time that, and he wanted to get out, and he may have approached, I think, Woody and said, "Hey, would you like to acquire me?" We somehow there was some connection point there. We had started to think about creating something like that within CTLF ourselves. We were going to create it from scratch, but it was serendipity that that Scott approached us, or we approached him, to however that happened, and I think Greg orchestrated that purchase of Strategic Connections. So that became a great, revenue driver for CTLF, to help us, continue to create events. So we had the event side, and then the networking, referrals, whatever you want to call Strategic Connections.
Yeah, so the whole idea was just how do we add more value to our constituents in this community? We had 2 signature events, and we're like, what do we do in between those? Scott was ready to sell. In fact, Bob, he actually approached Matt Emerson and I. We went to lunch with him and orchestrated the purchase and laid it in. And if you remember correctly, we bought it and had like 138 members, and like 3 months later, it had like 75 members. Like
Right.
it was a mass exodus. So we had to do a lot of work to put the tires back on and get it rolling again, but which turned out to be our signature program. And we, of course, plugged in Wise Women and a number of other things along the way. And now Civico is going to do exciting things with the organization.
I just love being a part of a group of men and women who were there to serve one another and not themselves. And I maybe part of, and maybe you can just tell me, because I've never really asked. What I wanted to do was help others too. And I had really no idea the background of CTLF from the beginning, and being a leadership coach that was focusing on servant leadership, it seemed to be a good mix, or seemed to be a good match. But the more I got in there, the more interested I was in being a part of what at least the chapter's direction was. And I know Matt Ward and Sarah called me into the CTL offices and said they needed to speak with me. And I thought, okay, well, I just behaved my way out of another group. But they actually wanted to ask me if I wanted to be vice president and be the person who did the introductions. And that was probably one of my most proud moments relative to my relationship with CTLF, because I took it upon myself to, what can we really share about these individuals in front of everybody that would be more interesting than just what we already know because we can read it. And I loved interviewing, and I say that very intentionally, the guest that was going to be recognized the next week or later that week. And to me, that was the beginning of my falling in love with CTLF and Strategic Connections. And let's give Sarah van Rensburg a huge shout out. She was a mover of mountains. Again, just a beautiful person inside and out, and easy to follow, easy to communicate with. And anybody else want to share their comments about Sarah? If not, I've got a few more questions. Greg?
I'd love to camp in on Sarah, because you're spot on, Greg. Even at the board table with all 8 board members of CTLF, Sarah was the tip of the arrow of heart-led leadership.
Yeah.
And she was the creator of value programs like the Leadership Growth Experience and PDF, personal development forums. Like, she was always thinking, how do we integrate this heart-led culture into programming that's got value?
Yeah.
And I will say that, like, some of those meetings were pretty tough, Bob. If you remember, like, we were tough on Sarah as the CEO, because we had this betwixt and between. We're not a nonprofit, we're not a for-profit, but we don't want to keep writing checks. We want it to at least sustain itself. We really struggle with that over time. And Sarah took a lot of bullets along the way, keeping the course of why we existed and being true to our mission. So kudos to Sarah, absolutely, for leading this organization.
Yeah,
I would the transition.
Echo everything you just said. And there was I think we all experienced a lot of growth in Sarah. I mean, she really became a really powerful leader during the course of her leadership of CTLF. It was really inspiring to watch. She connected with what was really important to her, what she believed had value to others, and she doubled down on that, and she was unwavering in that. Yeah.
Terrific.
Sure.
You said one of my favorite words, Bob, growth. And when I met you, you were the guy, the salesperson of your office company, Officescapes, I remember. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I didn't own Officescapes. I was a senior leader at Officescapes. Yeah.
But the salesperson.
Well, I was more in charge of a particular business. My title was vice president of ventures, so I was trying to I was growing a particular aspect of their product offering, kind of
Okay.
architectural walls. There was, I mean, that's a very robust. That was a very robust organization with a really strong team of people.
So
Sales
when I
people.
met you, you had both feet firmly planted in that organization. And then all of a sudden, you decided, what if? And I want to hear how you grew as a man on your what if question. Because I know I had many conversations with you, Mr. Newman, about what if. And we have some analogies to go through here. I know Doug McGee was a big influence on you. But
Yes.
just take us through quickly that transition from Bob Neuman, the person who works for an organization, to Bob Neuman, who now, I mean, it's funny. Open space has been mentioned during this conversation, and you've been recognized as adventure twice during this conversation. And then, so let's move into even how you named your organization. But take us through as long as or short as you want to the transition of your growth, because I
Well,
was there to witness it, my friend.
I'll
And
try to make it. I'll try to make it pretty quick. But yeah, that picture in back of me was kind of the start of it. Climbing the Grand Teton with my wife and her brother Mark and another fella from Laramie, as I told you earlier. That was just kind of an awakening for me. It really was. It was. We got to Jackson on a Thursday or Friday night and peered up at 7,000 feet of black rock, which is the Grand Teton, and I was really out of my comfort zone at that. Looking at that, I'm like, we're going to climb that thing, and then okay, and we did. We climbed it. We all came out healthy and happy, and I just remember walking down, just feeling completely elated and having my mind blown in just a couple of in 2 days, thinking, well, here I approached this thing with all these fears and doubts and came out the other side, having experienced this sort of transformation through an adventure. And I thought, other people need this. Other business owners like me, I think, need some kind of experience, because we all create stories about what we can and can't do.
yep.
And that carries forward in all aspects of our lives. So I wanted to share those kinds of experiences. Mostly at that time, I had a lot of passion, not a lot of plan. I just wanted to share those kind of experiences with others, and then just have a conversation around, well, where else did those fears show up? What else, now that you know what you can do here, what else can you do? What else is
Mhm.
possible? So yeah, I created something called Biz Adventure initially, and Woody was very helpful in helping me, kind of frame that up. And then I think it was on that bike trip that you talked about earlier, when we were biking from Telluride to Moab, that so another person in our CTLF community, Johnny Hyde, who I was working with at the time to help me with Biz Adventure. He said, "Hey, how about you? I've interviewed all these people that have been on your experiences, and it strikes me that it's more about open space." And I'm like, "Okay, that's great. Yes, open space leadership. I love that." And I think I asked you guys on that ride as we were going from one hut to another, "What do you think about this name?" And you said, "Yeah, that's great." So that's yeah. P.S. That's how that came to be.
Well, this mountain behind me is Mount Aconcagua, and that mountain, I didn't get to 22,800 feet, but about 18,000 feet up, that changed my life. And I
Yeah.
came down early to be the person I had never even considered being. You talk
Mm.
about fears and doubts. I was living a life that was full of opportunity, and newly married, two kids, one that I knew I was going to have, the other one was a surprise. But mountains can change our world, and I'm not going to tell my story now. It's not about me today. Um, what do you tell us about and again, I can't make this up. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico with my new bride. There's no one else in the restaurant, and I look over there and I said, That's Greg Greenwood." And I believe we can tell the story now, and if not, we can edit it out, Greg. But I said, obviously, I went over there and said hello, and he introduced me to this beautiful woman named Bridget, and he goes, no one knows. Knows what? Anyway, go ahead and tell the story, because this person, in my humble opinion, I haven't known you nearly as long as Mr. Neuman, Greg, but I believe this woman has changed your world, not only your life. And tell us if that's true and why.
Absolutely, Bridget's changed my world, my life, my heart, my everything. And not taking anything away from my past, but my present is extraordinary when it comes to intimate relationship and marriage. And now I have a stepson whose father sadly has passed away. So we have a special connection.
Mm,
He's got an entrepreneurial spirit, and he's moving to Denver after he graduates from Auburn. Like so many things. I was never a cat person. Bridget's cat of 14 years passed away a few months ago. We walk in a restaurant last week, saw a batch of 4 kittens. One of them looks exactly like her cat when she had adopted it. So now we have a cat. Like, yeah, so much has happened here, but it was starting when I saw you in Santa Fe at that restaurant.
yeah.
I'd bought Bridget a ring that day, and no one knew. My mother didn't even know. And we're over there just giddy. And I look over and then there's Greg, Aden. I'm going, no way.
You, you can't make that stuff up.
No, it's pretty crazy. And Bridget didn't know either. I knew I was buying a ring in Santa Fe, and we walked into Bella Jewelry there on the square and or on the way to the square. It just was a special day, and it was cool to run into you there that night, and a wonderful dinner, might I add, at that really authentic Southwestern Mexican restaurant that
Yeah.
we were in. I
Yeah.
don't remember what it was called.
We'll give it a name. It's called The Shed.
That's it, right? The Shed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for
And
remembering that.
let's give your stepsons a name too.
Jack.
Jack.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Jack's 21. He'll be 22 in just a couple of weeks, end of the month. So he's a
Yeah.
senior. He's studying political science at Auburn.
Beautiful.
We've already toured CU Law School in Boulder and DU Law School in Denver, and he loves the DU campus. So he's really focused on going there. He's already figured out how he's going to pay for it with scholarships and so on. He's really been working on his grade point. He's super into basketball, and he wants to do an internship, take a gap year, and work for the Nuggets. We're working on a way to get him into the Nuggets, whether it's a free internship or not, we don't care. We just want him a part of the organization. What he'd love to do is study or practice sports management law for the
Sure.
players, represent the players. So he's really excited about that. So I've never had children. This is a new chapter for me. It's from the inside out glowing to be a pseudo father, like stepfather for a fine young man. At his age, Greg, I was out of control. I was figuring out how to buy another kayak and mountain bike and move to Colorado and change my
Guilty.
life. Yeah. And he is as laser focused on what his future is going to look like. So it's impressive.
Nothing has come easy to any one of the three of us. There has been challenges, and Bob, you kind of alluded the big question: what made you decide, other than wanting to share adventures with other people? You made a big shift, and what was it like to be in your heart, and you and Wendy communicating about, Wendy, your wife, communicating about what would it be if you left a big job and started something that your heart was just telling you got to do? What were those conversations like, and what were the struggles letting go of a pretty good gig that you had?
Yeah. Lots of fear, lots of reading. I mean, as
Mm,
I was contemplating that, I was reading book after book after book on leadership and following your heart and all that stuff. And I kept reading like the next book. Hopefully that will give me a clear answer. And I realized that there was no clear answer in any of these books. And I was, I think at that point, I may have been, in the Aconcagua partnership with you,
yes,
which
you
was,
were.
which is a bunch of other coaches and heart-led, leaders who only want the best for each other. And maybe it was, well, all of you, Todd Musselman, Mark Musselman, you, Molly Fiore, Annie McGee, everybody said, you gotta jump. You gotta let go of there's so many metaphors for this, right? You gotta let go of the trapeze, right? And reach for the next one. Yeah, there was just a lot of fear around that. But we also said and by the way, my wife, Wendy, is my most incredible partner in life and adventure partner. She's a badass in her own right, in a very sort of humble, kind way. But she said, you got to do what you feel like you need to do, and regardless of whether you fail or not, what's the worst that could happen, right? We talked a lot about that. What's the worst that could happen? We're going to be okay no matter what. So yeah, those were a lot of the things that I navigated as I was contemplating that. Um,
Well, and just to reflect back, to to watch that journey was really special for me too, because you and I both had these big careers, these big jobs, money, security, blah, blah, blah. And we decided to let all that go for an opportunity to serve others or experience others and adventure. In my case, help them be better leaders. And everyone that I have met since you've made that change, people that you have communicated with, helped, BCR, and many others, they just rave about how you approach them and how you have helped them. So congratulations, Mr. Neuman, for making the shift. And maybe another time we'll dig deeper into what it is you're doing and how I may help there. Greg, what are you doing these days? And I know life hasn't come easy for everything you've done. Tell us about a struggle that you might want to share for the listeners out there who, yeah, I kind of like these guys because they're really cool to listen to, but they're real. And that's what I've always loved about you, Mr. Greenwood. You have always spoken your heart. You've been real with me. You've given me some great advice. You may not remember this, but it was a lunch stop, if you will. We were sitting on top of a peak during the bike ride, and I was trying to fill your head with opportunities for CTLF and connections about bench strength, etc. But you just have a way of letting people know you hear them and you get them. And have you always had that talent? Have you always had that desire to listen? And if not, where did you learn that? And then the second part of the question, where did you struggle to make some decisions that you ultimately made to help you create to where you are today?
Yeah, well, there's a particular audience that probably wouldn't say I'm as great a listener as you might perceive, but uh, if you've ever heard of or experienced Landmark Forum,
Oh yeah.
the curriculum for living, they called it. My business partner at Lantec encouraged me to go to that, and it really helped me uh, get to a centered place where I'm not always already listening, but that I'm hearing from a place of curiosity versus response.
Sure.
And I think that shifted my everything. What else I learned at Landmark was that we in life develop what they call coping mechanisms, which are winning formulas. And I was a very shy young person, believe it or not, in my childhood, all the way up until into my ninth grade year. And I went from public schools, first through eighth grade, to an all boys Catholic school because I was a little bit of a troubled youth. And in ninth grade, I walked into a class where I knew like three people,
Mm,
and I kind of was just became a wallflower. And I figured out, if I just ask a great question, I can get people talking, so I don't have to, and the focus won't be on me. And I became a good question asker. I think that's really served me well. Um, and so that's where that comes from. And then I will say that the bigger struggle that came to mind when you brought that up for me, especially for younger listeners,
hmm
is that I spent my 30-year career building two companies, one of which grew much bigger than the second one, but failed in the end in the telecom bust in 2001. It's a huge public display of failure and very humbling and depressing for me at the time. I leaned a lot on my faith during that period, which gave me a real centerline strength. And then at the end of the second company, which was less big, but way more profitable. And we had a positive financial exit, my former wife and I, when we sold it. And I wasn't okay. The pile of money, the success, it did not end well with the private equity acquirer. And then we got tucked into a platform company, and it was done overnight. They walked in one day, and we were out that day. And so I'm looking at the abyss going, I thought I was going to be a part of this and really grow it into a multinational brand. And here I am on the sidelines. And that's the moment where I said, I need help. I'm not okay. Money doesn't make everything okay. Freedom of schedule doesn't make everything okay. What makes things okay is the work we do that Bob talked about, the inside work. It's an inside job, right? And so I called Leslie Jones up and said, I'm not okay. I need some help. And that was the day that Bob was there for for the breakfast over in Golden. We had she said, let's get your friends together. Let's do a closing ceremony around this pain. And so we
Yeah.
did. It was an extraordinary morning. That group is still meeting every month now. It's boiled down to 15 members, and Leslie still leads it. It's 15 men, all in leadership roles. We come there to be better men, fathers, humans, and some people are still doing business.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of what I'm doing now is working in small groups with leaders, just helping reflect what's going on in their lives from what I hear with them. I've got 3 more calls this afternoon with younger leaders and just being there for them and listening. And along with that, I'm now running the second nonprofit organization, which I've really found really rewarding because they're kind of baby businesses, and it doesn't take a lot to bring efficiency, effectiveness to them and really move them along. And then I like to hand them off. So today I'm running Wish for Wheels, a nonprofit that does team building events, and formerly ran the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network, which serves you know growing entrepreneurs. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't imagine how difficult it was and how rewarding my life would be now, from selling a company, having a decent exit, to really being of service again in a way that's more fulfilling than any amount of money could be.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard enough to start your own organization. You have heard enough to stop in your track if you're in a dead end. You've heard enough to become a better partner for your spouse. And I hope, if you're really listening, how can you translate some of this business heart-led stuff to your family? How can you be a better parent today? And that, my friends, is one of my favorite questions. I lost a son in May. I still got one left. And every single day there's an opportunity for me to serve Brooks Aden. And that's asking him, what do you want from me? How can I help you succeed today? And I know it might sound corny, but practice that question. How may I be a better parent today? And you might just get some really cool feedback. But again, Bob Neuman, thank you for being here. Greg Greenwood, thanks for being my guest. And to all of you, go out and have a beautiful day. And don't forget, stay curious. God bless.
Mm.
I just finished a wonderful conversation with two men that I know and love, and frankly, very proud to call my friends and colleagues. Bob Neuman, who is the owner of Open Space Leadership and Adventures, and Mr. Greg Woody Greenwood, who is the executive director of Wish for Wheels. And during our conversation, I've known both of these men for over 10 years now. It started with why, and their why was back in 2009, about 14 years ago today. They met at Ted Montana's Grill to figure out what can we do different because of the debacle that just happened in 2008. And two words came up: serve first. And from that, thought leader came out of Bob Newman's mouth. Obviously, he's that kind of guy if you know him. And then Greg Greenwood knew of the word forum from being in EO Forum. And obviously they're in Colorado. So that's how Colorado Thought Leader Forum, or recognized today in Denver and around the region as CTLF. CTLF was created by these two gentlemen who then reached out, and I believe it was 6 to 8 other people: Doug Sparks, Matt Ward, Keith Hurley, Matt Emerson, and others that joined in and said, we can do something about serving others first. The other thing, the couple other takeaways that I heard is that that what keeps us from getting to where we want to go are our fears and our doubts. And none of these two gentlemen, neither of these two gentlemen said just remove them, but identify them and be aware of them. And then have the impact or the desire to have impact on others. And both of these gentlemen have dedicated their lives. Both came from big jobs, making decent money, etc., but then realized, why am I really here? Similar story to yours truly. Bob started from a mountain climb in Wyoming, the famous Grand Tetons. And Greg, I believe realized that being involved in nonprofit, giving back, serving first, was truly what was guiding him. There's several people that are involved in making them who they are today, and I'll give full credit to that in the written part of the podcast. But please listen to these two gentlemen. See if you can't bring out a few pearls of wisdom to help you have a terrific 2024 and beyond. Again, this is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership, and I really appreciate you watching the Servant Leadership podcast that I've put together over the last few years. Thank you.